All right, welcome to another deep dive, everybody. Today we're going to elementary primary education. Got this pretty hefty book, 500 Activities for the Primary Classroom, it's by Carol Reed. And even if you're way past those early school years, I think you'll be surprised by what we find in here about how we all learn.
Oh, yeah, definitely. 500 activities, that sounds like a lot to get through, but
Yeah.
that's why we're here. We're going to dig in and find those real gems, those activities that kind of show us how kids learn language, how they pick up words, and, just how they engage with stories and games.
Yeah, and not just like, okay, here's what they do in the classroom, but why does a game make a word stick?
Mm,
What's the magic behind that? How does a simple story help a kid actually start to understand and use language? That's what we're looking at today.
absolutely.
So let's jump right in. We're
Mm.
starting with listening and speaking. And you might think, okay, that's just hearing and talking, right?
Mm.
But when you're a kid, especially if you're learning a new language, it is so much more than that.
It's a whole different world for them, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, it's about making sense of everything around them, figuring out what people mean by their tone of voice. What's the situation? Are they happy? Are they angry? Trying to understand what's behind the words. And all that is really, really important for how they learn to use language themselves.
Yeah, and Carol Reed, she gives some really cool ways to use this to make it work for you. Like the gym sequence activity, page 20. And this is for kids, let's say 4 to 10 years old.
Yeah.
Simple instructions, get them moving, jump, clap your hands, turn around. Seems pretty basic, but why is this so powerful for kids at this age?
I think it really comes down to how much kids learn by doing, by actually moving their bodies. So when they hear jump and they jump, that word and that action are totally connected for them.
Right.
And it's so much stronger than just seeing the word or hearing it. It's like they're living it.
Right. It's not just in their heads,
Yeah,
it's their whole bodies involved.
exactly.
Okay, so right next to that, you've got listen and respond. Page 20 and 21. This one uses nonverbal cues, so not just words, but gestures too, and simple instructions. It's for the little ones, 4 to 8 years old, and it's all about concentration, getting them to coordinate their bodies. And the language focus here is to be and naming things in the classroom. So how does this build on that gym sequence idea?
Well, you're adding a whole new layer, right? It's still about following instructions, but now you've got body language, facial expressions. They got figured those out alongside the
Oh,
words.
that's interesting.
And that's so important for, just understanding people in real life. Plus, you're using to be with stuff they see every day. It is a chair, these are books, so those basic words really start to click.
Yeah, it's not just some random word, it's something right there in
Yeah.
front of them. All right, let's move on to a slightly older group. So, sentence round on page 25. This is good for kids from 4 to 12. They get to finish sentences like, my favorite animal is,
Mm.
or if I could fly, I would.
Hmm.
Simple prompts, but what do they do for a kid's language, their confidence?
I think a lot of kids, especially when they're learning a new language, they get nervous about speaking up.
Makes sense.
This gives them a little help, right?
Yeah.
A starting point. So they don't have to come up with the whole sentence from scratch, take some pressure off.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And when they hear other kids saying sentences like that, it reinforces what they're learning. It can give them new ideas too.
Right, right. Okay, let's get a little more interactive. Classroom shop, this is on page 27. Kids, about 6 to 10 years old, they get to play shop. Buying and selling, asking for things, figuring out prices, all about numbers, vocabulary for things you'd find in a classroom. Why is role-playing like this so good for language learning?
Because it's real, it's not just practicing random words. They're in a situation they understand.
Yeah.
How much is it? These are phrases they might actually use outside of school.
It's practical.
Exactly.
And they got to communicate to get what they want so it sticks with them.
Yeah.
All right, last one in this section. Transport survey on page 37. This is for the 8 to 12-year-olds. They ask their classmates how they get to school. Bus, car walk, whatever. And they're using those comparing words like faster, slower. How does this push their language skills further?
It takes them beyond just knowing single words. Now they're building sentences, comparing things.
Oh, okay.
Plus, they're actually out there talking to people, getting information.
So it's not just a worksheet, it's real communication.
Exactly. And then they have to think about what they've learned, compare those answers. It's early data analysis, but it's fun and it makes sense to them because it's about their lives.
So from following instructions to doing a little research project, it's all about getting them active, giving them real reasons to use the language. That's
Hmm.
really cool. Okay, let's shift gears now. We're moving on to reading and writing. two skills that are, well, they're basically the foundation of being able to learn anything, right?
Oh, absolutely. And they go hand in hand. You know, when you read, you see all these new words, different ways of putting sentences together, new ideas, and that all feeds into how you write. And then when you write, you understand better how language works when you're reading.
Yeah, they kind of build each other up.
Yeah, definitely. And these activities Carol Reed has in here, they really show that connection.
All right, let's start with shared writing. This is on page 57. The whole class works together to write something. Maybe they're inspired by a picture or a poster. Good for a big range of ages, too, from 2 all the way up to 10. And the language focus here is present simple, words to describe animals, and the phrase have got. So what's the benefit of writing together like this?
Well, for kids who maybe aren't so confident about their writing, it's a huge help. They get to be part of the process, they learn from each other, they see how sentences are built, how words are used in real situations.
Okay, so it takes some of that pressure off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And having that picture or poster gives them a starting point so they're not just staring at a blank page.
Right, right. It's like a group effort, a team-building exercise for literacy.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, so let's check out Secret Code, page 58. This one's for the older elementary kids, 8 to 12. They had to decode messages using, like, a grid with the alphabet on it. It's about reading, but also knowing your ABCs really well.
Mm.
So how does this fun activity actually help them become better readers?
It turns reading into a puzzle, right?
Yeah.
They have to use what they know about the alphabet, how letters and numbers go together, and they have to pay attention to every little detail to crack the code.
That's cool, like a little detective work.
Exactly. And while they're doing that, they're practicing the alphabet, numbers, words like in, next to, when they're talking about where things are on the grid. So it's learning, but it feels like a game.
Sneaking in those essential skills, I like it. Now we've got date puzzle on page 59, another one for the 8 to 12 group. They read sentences, and then they have to match them to the right dates on a calendar. So we're talking days of the week, months, those number words like first, second, and words like on and in for time. So what skills is this puzzle helping them develop?
This is all about making reading useful, right? They're not just reading words, they're taking information from what they read and then using it with a calendar, something they see in real life.
Right, so it connects to their world.
Exactly. It helps them understand words for time, those little words like on and in that tell you when things happen. And they have to find specific information in the sentences. It's good practice for reading in general.
Yeah, it's reading with a purpose. Okay, then we've got riddle time. This is pages 60 and 61 for kids 7 to 12. They get to create and solve riddles. And the language focus is colors, present simple, that phrase have got, and words for animals. So what makes riddles so good for language learning?
It's a two-way street, right? When you solve a riddle, you have to read carefully, understand those clues to figure out the answer. But when you make a riddle, you have to think, okay, what's special about this thing? How can I describe it using the right words?
Yes, you're using the language in both directions.
Exactly. And they give an example here. It's black and white. It lives in grasslands. It's got 4 legs. It eats grass. And you got to think, what could that be?
A zebra.
Exactly. You need those specific words, that simple grammar, to get to the right answer. It makes them think and be creative with language.
That's fun, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, last one for this section. Reading grid, page 61 and 62. This is for the older kids again, 9 to 12. They read a short text, maybe about different cities like London, New York, Tokyo. Then they fill out a grid with information from the text. So it's about understanding what you read, but also taking notes. Language focus here is the present simple. How does this solidify their reading skills, especially at that age?
They're doing more than just reading the words, right? They're really digging into the information. They have to find specific details and then organize them.
Okay, so it's deeper than just surface level.
Exactly. And taking notes like that, that's a skill they'll need for, the rest of their school years and beyond. So it's good practice for the future.
Yeah, they don't always realize those skills are building blocks for bigger things.
Mhm.
So from writing stories together to cracking codes and figuring out riddles, you can really see how reading and writing work together to build those core literacy skills. All right, let's talk about vocabulary and grammar now. These can sometimes feel like the less exciting parts of language learning. But Carol Reed, she really emphasizes that these should be taught within real situations, especially for young learners. It shouldn't just be about memorizing lists of words or rules.
Right. It's got to be about using the language in a way that makes sense to them. That's how it sticks.
Exactly. So take Odd One Out, page 92. This works for a pretty wide range, 6 to 12-year-olds. You give them a set of words, and they have to figure out which one doesn't belong. It could be because of the meaning or because of some grammar rule. The language focus, well, it can be any words they know,
Mm.
plus those basic structures like be, have, got, the present simple, maybe using the word because.
So what's the learning power of this game? It seems pretty simple.
It makes them think about words, not just know them, right? What
Yeah.
do they mean? How do they fit together? Which one is the oddball?
Right.
Like they give some examples: carrot, banana, strawberry, apple.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right.
Yeah.
Why is one of those different? And then egg, hat, coat, ball.
Interesting. Okay.
So they have to explain why one doesn't fit. So it's not just knowing the words, it's understanding how they relate to each other.
Exactly. And using that word because, it gets them used to giving reasons, explaining their thinking.
Okay, that's clever. All right, let's look at word search, page 93, the one for ages 6 to 12. It's a classic, right?
Yeah.
You got a grid of letters, and you got to find the hidden words.
Yeah.
It's about spelling and recognizing words you already know. So how does this help with learning new words?
It's all about visuals. They're scanning those letters, looking for patterns, matching what they see with the words they know.
So it helps those spellings really sink in.
Exactly. And it's fun. It doesn't feel like a chore.
Right, it's a game.
Yeah.
Okay, keyword crossword, page 94. This one's for the older elementary kids again, 8 to 12. They solve simple crosswords, words they already know, but the focus is on jobs, present simple, and the phrase, it must be. So how does this help them go deeper with their vocabulary?
It's not just about recognizing the word. They have to think about the meaning. What does it mean in this situation? And they have to remember the word based on a clue, so that helps them really own it.
That makes sense.
And the crossword format, it gets them thinking about how words fit together, how ideas connect.
It's like a puzzle.
Exactly. And focusing on jobs that present simple tense, it gives them a theme to work with. Plus that phrase, it must be.
Yeah.
It gets them thinking logically, like a detective.
Okay, that's cool. Your last one in this section, Venn diagrams, pages 95 and 96. This is for 8 to 12-year-olds. They sort words into different categories using those overlapping circles, the Venn diagrams. So how does this visual way of sorting words help with vocabulary development?
It's all about seeing the connections and differences between words.
Right.
Like they give an example of sorting clothes for summer and winter. So shorts, coat, trainers. Where do they go on the diagram? What do they have in common? What's different?
Right. You got to think about what those words actually mean.
Exactly. So it's not just memorizing words, it's understanding them, how they fit into categories, and it's visual, so it's easier to remember.
Right. So through all these activities, we see that vocabulary and grammar don't have to be boring drills.
Right.
It's about making them active, making them think, and using the language in ways that are relevant to their world. Okay, final section. Let's talk storytelling and drama. Carol Reed, she really makes the point that these aren't just fun activities. They're powerful tools for language development, for sparking a kid's imagination, and for building those all-important social skills.
Oh, for sure. Storytelling and drama, they give kids this natural reason to communicate, to express themselves, to work together, and that's great for their language, but also just for how they learn to interact with others.
Yeah, it's not just about words on a page. So let's start with words in the story. This is page 117. It's all about finding and learning key words from a story. Maybe something like the Kraken. They do it by guessing what might happen and by hearing those words over and over again. Good for a big range of ages, 4 to 12. So the language focus is on the words from the story and the present simple. Why is this such an effective way to learn vocabulary?
When you hear a word in a story, in a situation, it just makes more sense.
Right, it has context.
Exactly. And the guessing, that keeps them hooked on the story. Plus, hearing the words repeated, it helps them stick.
Okay, so the story makes the words memorable. Now we've got picture the story. This is on page 118, also for ages 4 to 12. They get pictures from a story, they got to put them in the right order, and then they guess what happens next. So the language focus here is present continuous, past simple, past continuous, that be going to structure, and using words like perhaps and really to make predictions. How does this help them understand stories and use language better?
It's like they're building the story themselves, right?
Oh, interesting.
They're putting those pictures in order, figuring out what happened first, what happened next, and then what might happen in the future.
Right, so they're thinking about the flow of events.
Exactly. And to talk about all that, they're using different verb tenses, those helping verbs. It makes the story come alive for them because they're part of creating it.
Okay. And they give an example story here. The Boys and the Bear. A nice classic one. All right. Next we have respond to the word. This is on page 123 for ages 6 to 12. So there's a story, maybe something like The Ant and the Grasshopper, and the kids listen for certain words that are repeated. Every time they hear that word, they do a specific action. Like if they hear grasshopper, maybe they hop. The language focus is on those key words from the story. So what's the benefit of adding movement to storytelling like this?
It makes it more active, more exciting. They're not just listening, they're part of the story.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Right. And that action, it helps them remember the word. It's like their whole body is learning. They're embodying the story. Okay, we also have story sequence on page 124 for ages 6 to 12. This time, they get sentences from a familiar story, all mixed up, and they have to put them back in the right order. Language focus is past simple, present continuous, and words you'd find in fairy tales like prince, princess, witch, tower, forest, all that good stuff. So how does this help kids understand how stories are put together?
They're learning about the structure, the timeline of a story.
Okay, so it's not just about the characters and events, it's about how they fit together.
Exactly. They see that things happen in a certain order for a reason, there's cause and effect, and having that familiar vocabulary helps them focus on the structure.
Makes sense, yeah. All right, last one for today. Character in the round. On page 128, this is for ages 6 to 10, they choose a character from a story, and they create a visual representation of them. Could be a drawing, a collage, whatever. They have to include descriptions of how the character looks, their personality, what they do in the story. The language focus is present simple, have got, words for clothes, colors, words that describe people, and the past simple. So how does this activity help them really engage with characters in a story?
They're not just reading about the character, they're getting to know them inside and out.
All right, that's a nice way to put it.
Right. How do they look? What kind of person are they? What did they do in the story? It makes them think deeply about the character.
It's like they're becoming friends with the character.
Yeah, exactly. And to do all that, they need specific language, words to describe appearance, personality, actions. So it really builds up their vocabulary and grammar skills.
So through all these storytelling and drama activities, we see that it's about way more than just entertainment.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It's about igniting that imagination, getting them to really use language, and helping them develop those social skills that are going to be so important in their lives.
Absolutely.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive into Carol Reed's 500 activities for the primary classroom, it's clear that this book is a treasure trove of ideas.
Yeah.
But more than that, it gives you a real understanding of how to make language learning fun, engaging, and effective for young learners.
And what I find so impressive is how adaptable these activities are.
Right?
You can use them with different ages, different learning styles. They're not rigid, you know? They're starting points, and teachers can get creative and make them their own.
Yeah, that flexibility is so important. And it makes you think, doesn't it? All these activities, they seem so simple, playing games, telling stories, but they reveal some pretty deep truths about how we all learn, no matter how old we are.
That's so true. Whether it's following instructions in a fun way, decoding a message, or really getting to know a character, there are principles at work here that go way beyond the primary classroom.
Exactly. So as we finish up here, a little something to ponder. As you heard about these activities for kids, did any of them spark an aha moment for you? Do they make you think about how you learn best? Maybe some of these approaches, this focus on engagement and making things relevant, could be useful in your own life, whatever you're trying to learn.
It's never too late to learn from how kids learn, right?
Exactly. That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another exploration.
Sounds good.